Hey you, how's it going? My name is Ruby Price and you are listening to the 23rd episode of Fresh from the Scene. Now before we get started with the interview, if you do get something from this episode, and I really hope you do, please consider sharing it on social media. Really helps the podcast out with algorithms and stuff like that. And also, it's nice. If you tag me or the podcast in, it means that I know that you've enjoyed it and I can make more things along this particular line and speak to people who are more along this kind of, dynamic and stuff like that. There's links in the description for everything that you'll need. Just scroll down and click on them and that will be fantastic. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you leave a review. Or if you're listening on a platform that allows for it, leave a review. Cool. So without any further ado, let's get on with today's episode of Fresh from the Scene.
You're listening to Fresh from the Scene with your host, Ruby Price.
Welcome to Fresh from the Scene. Today's guest is the lovely Mr. Thomas Mitchener.
Hello all.
Hello, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm all good. Just stuck in my house like everybody else and figuring out how we sort of continue without all going a bit mad. But yeah, not bad.
Everyone is kind of on that verge of madness at the minute, and it's either going to unlock a lot of potential or throw a lot of it away, I think.
I think it's the sort of stop-startedness of it and the fact that certainly from the sort of arts side of things, no one in government seems to care at all about anything that people are going through at the moment in relationship to that. And yeah, so it's a very crazy thing. I think a lot of people think that, oh, it's great. Some people are able to be really creative and just go, oh, I've got all this free time at home and I can, write songs, I can do this, I can do that. But I think it's tricky because I think in this situation, it's quite an uninspiring situation really to be in. I think I think quite a few people find it quite hard to have that sort of drive. And also, it's like there's other factors that change in your life when everything gets turned upside down. So it's really strange. But it has been interesting. Like it's been interesting to see how the creative ways in which people are trying to get around things and trying new things out and pushing people into new areas. But yeah, it's a really odd. I don't think we'll ever experience this again. Well, I hope not.
Yeah, touch every piece of wood that anyone has ever owned.
Yeah, that's wood.
Yeah. So the people who don't know who you are you, Mitch? And, why is it that I've got you on my podcast?
Oh, I don't know. I think I should ask you that question. Why have you got me on the podcast? Well, I'm a producer and mix engineer from London. I run a recording studio in Watford called Broadfields Studio. I've been producing, recording, mixing out of there for years now. Absolutely years and years. Before when I started the studio when I was quite young. I started recording people when I was quite young. And I always sort of did it in conjunction and later on as sort of touring session musician. And I'd sort of do the two together. So yeah, I've done quite a bit of live playing as a musician, but also a lot of sort of studio production work. And now for the last few years, I've just been focusing fully on production work because it's sort of comes to a point where it's very hard to do sort of both at the same time because, one involves being away for months and the other one involves basically being in the studio and having people over and having deadlines. So yeah, that's who I am.
You've mentioned Broadfields and all of that. You have worked with so many people, particularly people who I recognize, especially very much known for Frank Carter and his various projects. You've worked with Blackwaters, Hello Operator, Strange Bones, Wargasm, Bakovi. How is it that you end up with so many different people? Is it connections or is it just being really good at what you do?
Well, it's probably a bit of each. Well, I would say I think the thing is, music industry is quite small, really, when it comes down to it. And I've been doing it for quite a while now, and you sort of, and through sort of touring and playing, but also through doing various work, your name sort of gets about. So I must have done hundreds of projects over the years, and nearly always, if you do one and it comes out good, somebody else will hear about it, and then it will sort of filter through, and then another band will go, oh, okay, we like that. Then you get sort of contacted, and the more artists you do, the more that happens, and it just sort of grows, you know. Now, obviously, I'd come from quite a sort of rock punk sort of background anyway. I mean, when I was younger, I used to promote sort of punk rock gigs in Watford, where I'm from, and always playing in bands around that scene. And there was only a few options of people to record people back then. And I thought, oh, you know what, if I started recording bands, that would be a good way to record my own band, because I'd know how to do it, but also to get to know other bands and get to know other gigs and become sort of immersed in it. And then that grows, you know. Then I started playing in bands that would go out on tour, and then you'd meet bands when you're out on tour. And then, you know, while I was doing that, I was trying to record people. And I don't think it's a case of, you know, one day someone goes, oh, Mitch, really like what you're doing. Here's all these bands that, you know, that were sort of linked in a strange way. It's more that you just keep doing it. And as you're progressing, as you're getting better, you're sort of working with different bands. And then I suppose for me, you know, obviously when I was sort of touring quite a bit, you know, I'd be doing it in my spare time and making records and whatnot. But then when I was sort of finished doing that and I was able to focus fully on it, yeah, you do one band and then another band hear them, and you get an email saying, hey, Mitch, heard this thing. Would you mind mixing, giving us a go? Or, you know, could we do a track with you? And that's how it sort of grows. And you sort of, you know, and it's brilliant. And I'm really, to be honest, I'm really lucky to be able to sort of have that point where I've got a lot of bands sort of contacting me to work on various stuff. But yeah, I think it's a lot of it is, you know, trying to improve and just keeping going with it, really, to be completely honest. I think always trying to push yourself to try new things and get better. Like your next production always wants to be better than the one before. You've always got that in your mind. I think anyone creative does, don't they? They sort of think, right, I'm going to do that, but you know, I try to do new things all the time. And I think always trying to push yourself. I think creatively and artistically, when you become complacent is when you start making bad records, or you start not thinking about things in the right way. So I try to keep a fresh approach to everything I do. And also, you know, when it comes down to it, it's just a lot of the job is people and enjoying being with people and learning what they want from something, and try to understand, you know, like those bands you listed off there, a lot of them work in the sort of guitar rock world, but they're massively different in what they want, what they like, where they want to see their music. And you have to sort of get in the space of seeing things from their perspective and understanding where they're coming from, and then knowing how to get it there, you know. And that, I think, just comes from experience, just doing it over and over again and trying new things, you know. And also communication with artists, making sure that, you know, you keep checking or asking them what their thoughts are, where they're coming from, what they envisage with things. I think it's a sort of mixture of all those things, really. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me, I'll just ramble on. So, like, you know.
Oh, rambling is very much encouraged on this podcast.
Tell me to shut up and ask me another question if I'm getting boring. But yeah, that's sort of how I think it's not an overnight thing. I think with music and any work really, you know, you got to sort of keep on at it, and you will get better, and you won't even notice it, and people will start talking about you more, and you sort of don't. It's really interesting doing, like, I try to do a bit of a sort of end of year sort of roundup of stuff I've worked on, and I sort of look back. I redid my website recently because I'm normally terrible at all these sort of elements of promotion. I'm trying to get better at it, and that's been quite good about being at home, as I've been able to focus on that a bit more. But just looking, I did my entire discography from when I started to sort of now. It took me ages. I had to go through and find out when I did records and what. But to look over it, you see it sort of slowly get busier and sort of do more stuff. And it's really nice to see that, because it doesn't just happen overnight. You know, you don't just buy some microphones and then it just happens. It's all the things sort of working together, you know, sort of get you there. And it's still very much a sort of journey, as I think it is for anyone in this sort of industry. You're sort of constantly pushing yourself for new stuff, new things you want to try, new people you want to work with, new ways of working. I think that's what keeps it fresh and keeps it interesting. And that's why it has been quite interesting at the moment that, you know, everyone's been forced to work in quite strange circumstances. You know, I've been doing mix sessions over Zoom, which is something I would have never have done in a million years. And it has its issues, but we got, you know, I've mixed stuff without even meeting band members, just over, like we are, like we're chatting now. And that's been quite a nice thing to go, oh, I can do that, Or a lot of artists recording stuff completely themselves, and then I'm mixing it. And that's never something that maybe the artists thought they could do, and they didn't realize they could just send it off to me, and then we could chat on Zoom and get it somewhere, That's changed, a little bit as well.
Like, obviously, as well, I try not to talk about the pandemic too much because obviously people are getting fed up of it at this point.
No, I can. Yeah, it's hard to avoid at the same point, though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Do you think it's possible that like all of these lockdowns and stuff are kind of allowing artists to then become better at recording in like their own bedrooms and stuff? Like, before it, we saw Billie Eilish go on to like have Grammy winning albums from stuff that was recording in her bedroom, obviously with a very good like home studio, but still home recorded.
Yeah, no, home recorded. I mean, it's always hard to know. Like, I mean, that Billie Eilish album sounds amazing, and I'm sure it was done in their bedroom. I mean, it's always funny though, because you do also get things where they say, this was recorded in. I remember when Foo Fighters did that. Is it Wasted Light? Recorded in Dave Grohl's garage, and Dave Grohl's garage was basically a fully fledged, huge analog recording studio. I was thinking, it's not really a garage, is it, Dave? But yeah. Aside from that, like I think. It is definitely, it's forcing people to learn, because they've got to put music out. People have to keep, especially now more than ever. I feel for the thing that I found really hard with this whole sort of pandemic, because it's gone on for so long. There's a lot of artists that we just sort of started off on a bit of a sort of trajectory, and then this has just come and just like a complete car crash. And now it's happening to everyone. That's true, but there's you know what it's like with bands and artists. There's a point, isn't there, where people start to hear about them. Then they go and see them live, then they go and see, and then it builds from there. But there's been a massive pause been put on a lot of those artists. So they've had to figure out a way to keep themselves online, keep themselves there, because they can't play shows, they can't meet people, can't go out and do things. They have to keep trying to churn out music, but also simultaneously learn how to do it. And I think it has meant that, there's been a lot of people learning more about, music production. I bet you there's probably an interesting, whereas the downsides of music performance, obviously, that whole live industry's disappeared. I'm sure the home recording world has suddenly sort of exploded a bit. And I'm noticing it myself. I know quite a few drummers. Suddenly, all the drummers I know started phoning me up, asking me about microphones and interfaces. And I've turned turn like garages into studios. They've done amazing jobs of it, or like turned teaching rooms into studios, bought equipment, learned how to do it. And now are sort of, recording drums for tracks for people. And, and I think that's a really nice thing that will come out of it. As long as I don't get too good at it, otherwise they're going to take my job away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it is really good. I think it's also giving those artists to understand that recording process really well, means that, when it does go back to normal and they go back more into studios, they'll have a higher understanding of what's going on than maybe they would have done before, But yeah, no, definitely. I think it is. I think there will be, even though it probably doesn't feel like it now, I think there will be, you have to sort of grasp at the positives of this situation. And there aren't many when it comes to music and live performance, but I think, if you can, some people have been able to learn new skill and do stuff. Yeah, I've successfully mixed tracks that people have, produced themselves. And it's, and that's been really nice. And that's not really something that was happening as much before,
I totally agree with you about the like artists just getting like momentum and stuff, because two of the people I live with are both in like different bands. One of them have put out 2 singles during this pandemic, and like obviously with a level of band that they're at, you release a single, you do all like the local music venues and stuff to get traction and stuff, but none of that's happened because there's no live scene. So like, they're releasing songs, but they're not getting that oomph that, you would normally get any year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And it's also that thing as well, is missing out as a band. But when you're first get together and you go out and you do your first few shows, you're learning as you go along as well. There's a really important point, where it feels like you're not earning any money and you're not, it's not getting anywhere, or it doesn't feel like it, but you're getting better. Like I was saying, without you realizing it. And those things work so well together. And, and I do feel that is obviously being missed out at the moment. And I think it will be, no doubt that things will go on. Obviously they will. But I do think this has obviously caused a massive issue in that respect. And I do feel for those artists that have sort of, there was a big question, like, I finished a couple of albums just before this happened. And there was questions of like, do we release it now? Because early on, everyone thought it would be a few months, didn't they? And then it would be, oh, no, we do. And no one really knew, and no one really knew what was going on. And is it good because everyone's at home? But are they listening to music? Because do most people listen to music when they're commuting? Or are they, all these sort of questions sort of came up. And I think everyone's just sort of, trying their best with it. But yeah, I definitely feel for those artists, especially who are sort of have just got started, got their plan of attack. Because people forget there's years before that happens, that builds up to that point. People just think, oh, you're a band, you put a single out. But they forget that, to get to the point where you've got a band in a room with some songs you've recorded, it takes years of like individual, like learning what you're doing, writing, rehearsing, saving up for equipment. Right? There's so many elements of it. Then to get to the point where it's going quite good, and then it suddenly, this sort of happens. But we'll see. I think that, as I say, trying to take the positives from it. Hopefully, when things get back on track, things can sort of, pick up where they left off, and those artists will still have the power and the interest of people than they did when they started it, basically.
Yeah.
But time will tell. I really hope so.
So to go to a more positive topic, when people are approaching you with like something that they want you to be working on, what is it that makes you say yes? Like, what is there some sort of like, spark that you see in the project? Is it just, probably not, but is it the sound of a cash machine? Is it like the creativity of something?
I don't think you do this job with the sound of a cash machine coming but I know because often, we're in but I think it's a really good question, actually. And I think that you've got to like it, or you've got to appreciate it. Actually, is a better way of putting it. And you have to think that you can offer something to it. Like if I hear something and I really love it and it sounds amazing and it's produced brilliantly, and the person goes, oh, we want to work with you. And if I think I can add something to that and I can push it further than it is, I'll do it. At the same point, if I think, if it's not something that I'm sort of feeling is into, or I might not be the right person for, I might say, what, I'm probably not going to get what you want, maybe try this person or this person. They might be more suited. I think you have to sort of know where your strengths lie and what you can bring to the table. Because sometimes I hear an artist and I think, oh, I can really hear, I immediately start thinking of things I can do with it and things we can try. And wouldn't it be cool to give this a go from like a rough demo? And when you start feeling like that, I know this will be really fun. And then more often than not, people who have similar tastes and similar ways of looking at things tend to sort of get on. So you then start chatting to artists and you think, oh, okay, well, yeah, I was thinking of doing that too. And then that sort of relationship starts. And that's really, really nice because, it becomes firstly really fun and really enjoyable, but you're both sort of pushing each other to get it somewhere. And it ends up hopefully becoming, better than you both thought it would be. And whereas sometimes you'll get an artist and I'll, as I say, I'll hear it and I'll think maybe I'm not the right person for that, that project. Or it doesn't sort of get me immediately thinking, and if I can't quite see it myself, I'm not going to say to them that I do purely to get a job, because I think it's wasting everyone's time. And there might be somebody else that go, I know exactly what I'll do with that, And I think that's what it's all about. I think with production and music and everything, it's, there's this big pool of people and pool of artists, and everyone's sort of different and looks at things slightly different ways. And it's all about finding out who fits with the right person, the right people and the right bands, because a lot of it's personality, a lot of it's how you hear things, taste, I often try and get people to send me like a playlist of stuff they like, or stuff they sort of inspires what they do, not to rip off, but to sort of be like, where's your head at? What do you like? What are you listening to? You can tell a lot about someone's music by their sort of influences, and that always helps me sort of understand. And sometimes, for mixing, it's slightly different because, people will say, we've heard what you've done. I get it with production as well, but with mixing, I've heard what you've done with these bands. We'd love you to mix this track with, and I'll listen to the band and be like, well, I can see why I think that would work. And then we just sort of go for it. And then you do a mix and you go backwards and forwards on emails or Zooms. And then if you get it there, then great. Sometimes it might be that you do that and either of us thinks, it hasn't quite worked that way. And then they might do it with somebody else. But I think it's all for trying. I think it's really important to try different people and put yourselves in different situations. If you're a producer or an artist, I think it really should be sort of encouraged. But yeah, that's sort of what I would say. I mean, there's sort of obviously early on when you start, I recorded everybody. I recorded absolutely everybody I could find because you're constantly learning. And now I've tried this year a little bit to push myself into some newer areas. So I've worked with some artists that I possibly wouldn't normally be known for, and that's been really exciting for me. And it's made it sort of push me out of my comfort zone a little bit, and that's been really interesting and fun to do. And I'm trying to do more and more of that, like, because I think that I'm offering a slightly different perspective to a different style of music, and hopefully that, and it's been great to do that. So yeah, that's sort of what I would say. I think it's got to feel like the right move. Normally if something feels like it might not work early on, it normally doesn't. Like, I'm getting better at trusting my instincts. Well, I'm trying to get better at trusting my instincts. If I think, I don't know if we're going to match on this, more often than not, yeah, I'm starting to think things which I've done in the past where I might not have done that, I might not do now, basically. But it was all part of that learning curve to get there, I suppose.
You've kind of become pretty proficient at doing some live mixes as well, I've noticed. One of my favorite possessions that I've got is the triple vinyl Live at Brixton Frank Carter record.
Oh, awesome.
And yeah, and you've also done there was the live mixes on the deluxe edition of Blossom. There was a Queen of the Stone Age live album and stuff.
That was only one track, sadly, but that was for MTV. But it was that was a real privilege to do that, to be able to do it. I'm obviously a massive Queen of the Stone Age fan, so when I got the chance to mix that, I was like, this is awesome. But and it was quite a buzz to sort of hear back, oh yeah, the guys like it. I think that's awesome. That was a few years ago as well. That was when I was still touring. And I did that. Yeah, sorry, doing live stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed doing the live mixing. I think it's really different to studio stuff. I've done it I've always quite liked the idea, because obviously studio recording is, it's very considered. You're all in a room. You're you're trying different ways of doing things. There's various other stuff you can do. There's obviously studio tricks and whatnot. And I've always been really inspired by the idea of not just looking at production as like making everything sound big and trying different things and adding layers and making this big thing. I also love, as a musician, the idea of recording as sort of capturing a moment in time has always really fascinated me. And I sort of love listening to alternative versions and live versions, because it's, being able to capture that performance at that period with that band at that point, I think is a really nice thing. And I think it's always really interesting as well. I mean, so it's been good over the last few years to do a few live albums. I've done quite a lot for Rattlesnakes. When we played Brixton, I remember I was in the band, and then I'd sort of left playing bass, and then I sort of came back and did a bit of keys and guitar and vocals and stuff, sort of on certain shows and on UK tours for a bit. And we did the Brixton show was a big one, because it was like all the songs of all of the two albums that were out at the time and the extra ones, all played at one gig. Yeah, we knew we were recording. The idea originally was they recorded the gig. They had a company come in who did a really good job of recording everything, and then they could give CDs to people on the night as they left. And obviously that was, a guy in a van at the back of Brixton Academy, mixing it as it was happening. And then it came back, and obviously that's got a real sort of vibe about it. But I remember thinking, you know what, it would be cool to, I'm pretty sure if I can get the files, we could, just not be mixing it while it's happening, basically, and sort of go through and and they wanted to do a live record out of it. So we did that, and that was really fun. I previously done a version of Loss on a 7-inch with Rattlesnakes. But I've done previous recordings as well with, Gallows years ago. I remember recording Gallows after at the Macbeth in East London. I remember doing Young Guns. Quite a few different sort of bands over the years. And then, this came around to this sort of Blossom reissue, which sort of, obviously it came to sort of 5 years since that album came out. And they wanted to celebrate it in some way. But obviously it was, again, when this whole pandemic thing sort of started. So there's a load of ideas that were sort of swimming around of things they could do to make something special, to make a nice package of it. And then I sort of remembered that for some weird reason, I have absolutely no idea why I did this. When the first ever Rattlesnakes tour we ever did, and this is a tour that Frank booked himself. There was no record label. We'd done the album in sort of secret. There was only 3 songs that existed. There was no agent, manager, record. There was nothing. It was basically Frank, Dean, me and them. And then we went out on tour. And at that time, I was really fascinated about recording live, artists. I had an idea that I wanted to go and start recording live gigs more. So I built this sort of recording system, big rack unit. And I sort of said to the guys, I said, do you mind if I bring it along and just record the first tour, purely just to see if this works, so then I can go back to studio and say, hey guys, I can record gigs, like, tell me what you know. And they were like, yeah, it's fine, no problem. And these were like tiny little shows, like we did like Star and Garter in Manchester, and we did like, I remember Carlisle, Brickyard, we did where else was it?
Key Club Leeds.
Key Club in Leeds, that was it. Yeah, I mean there was like, there were not huge gigs, and I was carting this, so a little bit like the album where I was engineering while playing bass. With this, I had at the side of each of the stages had this rack with a laptop on top of it, and I'd like hit record at the beginning, and then throughout the gig, which, as you know, were sort of often chaos, I'd be sort of every now and looking at my computer being like, yep, still recording, good. And then every now and then it would like freeze because it'd get too hot or something. And I did these recordings and I sort of forgot about them. And then it came around to sort of discussions about what we could do with Blossom. And I was like, I've got the entire first tour like recorded. And they were all quite varying in, the rooms were completely different. We were using a lot of the microphones of the venues. It was all really, So then we decided to I said to them, I think we can make a mirror image album of Blossom, of the first album, exactly the same track listing from the first tour. And that's quite cool. Like no bands record their first tour. I mean, I was saying to you earlier, like you're learning how to do it at the beginning. So the live Blossom tracks are definitely an experience. They're not faultless by any chance, because one of the gigs is the second gig we've ever played. The Kingston one is the second time we'd ever played in public, and the first time was in a tattoo shop. So it didn't really make, So we put that. Luckily, I got to spend the beginning of the sort of lockdown listening through to every Rattlesnakes gig from the entire first tour and picking which were the best versions of songs and doing it. But it was really nice to do that, actually. It was kind of bizarre listening to loads of live shows when they'd just been banned. So it was kind of nice and a bit weird. But yeah, that was really fun. It's nice to see that people have really seemed to like, them coming out, and it's also nice because people from those tours sort of remembered being there and sort of, oh yeah, I was at that gig, and that's kind of cool for the fans that were there early on to be like, oh, they put a live album out of the gigs that I went to, No, I really enjoy the live stuff. I think it's a different discipline to being a sort of studio producer.
It made me laugh when I was either reading an interview with Frank or listening to an interview with Frank, and he was saying about Fire, just like how he'd forgot it even existed. And I was like, how do you forget that song exists? Because, that song has the same qualities as its title.
It's funny, isn't it? It's funny how we recorded the album really quickly, and a lot of songs got recorded, and then a couple of them were like quite short, and for whatever reason they didn't quite make the final cut, and they've just been sitting in my hard drive ever since. They've just been there, and not until again this reissue came about, and there's other tracks that we did that were never mixed, so I had to sort of go back in and trying to mix them in the same way as I did 5 years ago. Is quite weird because you've got to sort of get yourself into that headspace of how you did things and look at But yeah, it's funny though, because I think as artists and bands, you just sort of keep moving forward. So if something doesn't work for a song, that track Fire wouldn't have worked in later albums, because Rattlesnakes every album is quite different to the next. They're all evolving. So, if something's not worked for that point, hasn't quite fitted on that album, I think it just, it's put to one side, and then it's not until these moments where you're like, oh, it'd be cool to do a reissue. What have we got? And then you think, oh shit, yeah, there's that, and there's this, and then you listen to them 5 years later on and think, well, why wasn't that on the album? That's really weird. Like, why? But there was obviously a reason that the guys had. But yeah, it was quite nice to do that. It was nice to get, I must say, it was nice to get them after spending, quite a long time getting the mixes and getting it all ready, to have it come through the post in this big, massive vinyl with, all the live tracks and stuff that we've done. Yeah, it's always a really nice sort of, nice moment, because it is the thing about that album, it was all about capturing a sort of live feel when we recorded it as a record. Like, it sounds raw and live, so it's quite nice to, well, show the world what it was like on the second time we'd ever played it live, or the first tour we ever did, and put that out for people. Because
So who would you say, in terms of production, like as a producer, is on top of the game at the minute? Like, who are the people who, if you're not right for a project, you're pointing people at?
There's loads of people. There's a really nice sort of point in UK music at the moment. There's so many good producers out there. I worry about mentioning names because I'm worried I'm going to forget other people, and I then feel really, really bad about it. And I'll be like, oh God, I haven't mentioned that person, because there is just so many. Like, I think the key with artists is to sort of look at what their sort of show reel is and what they've been doing, and get talking to as many people as you can. Because the funny thing is, as well, is that I could say, if it's not something for me, or it doesn't work for me, you've mentioned a few people based on the sort of style you think. But most importantly, I think a lot of people forget that working well in production is more about personalities working together. If you click with somebody, I can tell on a phone call pretty quickly if the artist I'm going to work with, if it's going to work. If it's that awkward and we both sort of accidentally we're really wanting to sort of get on, but we end up citing different references and not quite seeing it, then I know, okay, this might not be. But if you get on with somebody and you have a laugh with them and it's fun, that's the most important thing. And I think that's what I would say to people to do. It's not necessarily, to go by specific people, because I think it changes depending on the artist. But I think it's really good to just get chatting to as many people, try as many people out as you can, because there are so many great sort of producers in the UK at the moment, sort of doing stuff. They're really of all levels, really. And I think it's nice as well, because everyone has their own different sort of way of doing things, and it's a really sort of healthy environment. And it's good as well, because a lot of people who sort of know each other, and you're all mates, and you meet up and chat and stuff. And it's good to sort of have that community of other producers to sort of learn from as well, But yeah, I'm worried I'm going to list the people that I really like, and then I'm going to get off this call and go, oh shit, I didn't miss that person. So I think you could probably guess who I like.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, just to kind of round this up now, I'm going to try something I've not done on any of my previous podcasts, and that's a quick fire round.
You need a quick fire round with me, because I'll just keep chatting away. So
yeah, I mean, that's why I think it will work really well. I'm just going to give 2 options, and you've got to say which one,
right,
rings better for you. So, intimate gigs or stadium/arena gigs?
Intimate gigs.
MIDI instruments or real instruments?
Oh, real instruments every day.
Not music related, but Marvel or DC?
I have no idea what either of them are. No, I do, but I don't have any opinion. Say.
Streaming or physical media?
Physical media.
Reading or Leeds?
Oh, that's a tough one. I can't say. Reading. Oh no, Reading, because I grew up near Reading, and Reading was the local one. But I hate to say it, Leeds is, as much as I grew up going to Reading all the time, and that's a lot of my childhood. The Leeds crowd is a lot of fun. So I don't know. It's a tough one. I'm going to pass.
That's a very diplomatic way of saying
I think
Leeds.
you have to be diplomatic between Reading and... Oh no, I'm not saying Leeds.
To be fair, the Northerners do go hard.
Yeah, and my last gig with Rattlesnakes playing bass was Leeds as well, and that was really fun. So, yeah.
Song on repeat at the minute?
Oh, what am I listening to at the moment? I'm really enjoying... Well, I'm listening to new Viagra Boys album, which is really good. There's an album of last year that I actually love by a band called Another Sky, and I'm constantly listening to that. That's brilliant. A band called Document that I really like. That's 3 of them. It's funny when you get asked these questions and then your mind just goes completely blank as to what you've been listening to. But there's 3 of them anyway.
Potential artist of 2021. We might only be 2 weeks in, but...
Oh, God. Oh, I have no idea. I don't know if I can answer that. This is not going to be a quick fire answer on the phone. Okay, one artist I'm really excited to see. I think it's going to be a really good year for Wargasm. I think they're on a sort of point where it could, suddenly go massive. I really believe that. And I think that's going to be, certainly from the sort of rock world, I think that's definitely one to watch. And I'm not just saying that because I've worked on some tracks, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I put Backyard Bastards on my songs of 2020.
Yeah, no, I just think that I think when they get going live, and the way they've managed to keep things going while this has been sort of happening has been really good. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they'll do next year, definitely.
If people want to find you, Broadfields and or just you in general, where can they go if they want to find you?
On Instagram, I'm Tom Mitchener on Instagram. I've got www.thomasmitchener.co.uk, which is my freshly updated website, which has got everything on it and all the stuff I've done. And yeah, you can contact me there if any artists and bands and whatnot. Yeah, just you can drop me a line.
And whilst I've still got you, is there anything or anyone you would like to plug?
Oh, who would I like to plug? There's a few things. There's a lot of stuff that I'm working on at the moment, which I should have probably mentioned as well to add on to the. Problem is, when you get asked these questions about artists, I think I should mention the things that I've been really excited about and I've been working on. I've been working on with an artist called Zand, which is one of those projects that I was mentioning, where I've sort of done something a little bit different, started mixing. That's been really good because it's sort of taken me out of my comfort zone, but also the music's brilliant, and I really rate it, and it's been a real joy to do. And I think that's definitely going to be one for 2021 as well. I think really going to see that doing really well. Another thing, I've been working with Noah. No offense. We're working on a track at the moment, which I'm sort of mixing at via lockdown. Yeah, I think there's going to be loads coming from him next year as well. That's been a really exciting project because it's been kind of nice because he's been writing lots of songs and come to me to do some recording, and we started recording. We've been sort of recording when we can around lockdown and following procedures and all this sort of stuff. So it's been interesting sort of building it all up, and I'm really excited. Actually, the minute I get off this call, I'm cracking on with mixing it, so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else. There's a band called Suspects that I really love. I think they're going to be doing loads of stuff 2021. Your quick fire rounds put me on the spot now, and I'm not sure, but yeah, those definitely would be people I'd be, and I'm really excited to get working again. I think that's the thing that's been really hard about this sort of period, and obviously sorry to go on about this sort of pandemic, but it is such a massive thing, is that it's meant that you're sort of lacking that. It's been really good working with Noah because we've been able to sort of do stuff remotely and sort of chatting through things, come to studio a few times, but I've really missed that interaction of being in the studio with people. That's the thing that makes the job really enjoyable. And I am, I'm hoping that when this all sort of finishes and we can get back to things, that there'll be a real passion for it, and there'll be some really good music to be recorded and made. Not that there isn't at the moment, but I think definitely when these restrictions are lifted and things start to look a bit better, yeah, I'm positive for what's coming. I think the end of this year is going to be. Well, I think everyone's looking forward to the first festival they get to go to, aren't they? Let's be honest. It's been a really weird summer without one. But yeah, no, that'll be the things I would say to have a listen to, and yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Mitch.
Pleasure.
And I hope you have a good rest of the day mixing Noah.
Yeah, I will be. I'm going to crack on right now.
You're listening to Fresh from the Scene with Ruby Price.
Thank you very much for listening. I do hope you enjoyed that. As I mentioned at the start of this episode, if you did enjoy it, please do share it on social media. Share it with someone who you think might enjoy it. Share it with someone who you think might benefit from all the stuff that Mitch said in this podcast, because I certainly know a few people and hopefully they've listened to it. As I mentioned, there is links in the description to everything that you need to know, and also you can find Mitch on the links in the description as well. Thank you, Mitch, for coming on the podcast. It was so enjoyable. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next episode of Fresh from the Scene.